Good morning. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. What a joy. What a joyous time of year. And the reading this morning is one of the first times, not the first time, but one of the first times that the disciples see Jesus, the risen Lord. What I find really, really interesting and really, really beautiful about this passage is that Jesus comes with his wounds after the resurrection. And now some people might think, well, why can't God heal him? And I put to you, God has healed him. He's not in pain anymore, but he still has this wounded and this scarred body. So we're thinking this morning about disabilities. Do you believe that in heaven people have disabilities? It's a big question, and it's a difficult one because people have so many varied experiences with disabilities and with bodies that work differently. For some of us, it causes a great deal of pain and we'd rather be healed, but for some of us it's part of who we are and we'd rather not. So I'm going to tell you a story. I had a friend when I was at university, and she went to one of those churches where they do a lot of healing and laying on of hands and all that sort of thing. And she had a very difficult experience. Now, she had something similar to what Stephen Hawking has. So she used a voice box, and she used a wheelchair, and she went into this place. And she said, I just wanted to experience Jesus. What she experienced instead was people telling her, you need to be healed before you can experience Jesus. There's something wrong with you. Because she didn't go there to be healed. She said, I'm fine as I am. You know, she was one of the most clever people I've ever met. She was an astrophysicist, and she had an incredible sense of humour. She didn't need to be changed at all, and she very clearly told them that. Unfortunately, she had experience of a non-consensual healing, and that traumatised her, because it was about 5 years later when I met her, and she still wouldn't go near a church. And I don't really blame her. So there are some times when disability is part of who we are, and it doesn't need to be changed. But for some of us, it's something that we wish would be healed. So is there disability in heaven, I wonder? And I wanted to think about that idea of the body of Jesus and when Thomas recognises him. Because Thomas, we always think of doubting Thomas, don't we? He's known as doubting Thomas. He's the one who doubted. But what Thomas does do here is he recognises Jesus, not in his words, not in his actions, but he recognises Jesus in his wounds, in his scars, in the place where he's been broken, in the marks which violence and abuse have left upon his body. And he says, I recognise you. Now I know you are Jesus. What he really says is, my Lord and my God. Which makes no sense, because how can you recognise God from wounds? Surely God can't be wounded. My Lord and my God. The disciples were hiding, terrified, talking about the resurrection, hope, and what they thought was going to happen. Jesus had come back to see them on Easter Sunday, but they were still terrified. They didn't know what this new risen life was all about. They didn't know if they would be next on the cross. But Jesus appears. And as I say, he's got the marks of the nails in his hands and in his feet. See his hands and his feet. There is something so powerful about all the things that have happened to us, not being erased, wiped away, forgotten, but about what shapes us carrying forward, and is in fact the place where we are recognised and where God is recognised. Now, it isn't somewhere that everyone is. It's not the place where everyone is to find in the wounds a kind of hope, a kind of recognition of God, a kind of light in the darkness. But it is, for many people, something that is beautiful and healing. Whatsoever is done to defile, God can resurrect, can make clean, can re-empower, can revive. But that doesn't mean hiding, erasing, forgetting, pretending it never happened. The past shapes the future, but God takes those wounds and he blesses them, he uses them, and they become the place where we can recognize Jesus, the face of Jesus. God's story is not one of avoiding darkness, but of walking through it, through the valley of the shadow of death. Yet we fear no evil, for you are with me. Instead, those scars become part of our story, a reason for hope. See what I've lived through, see who I've become. And it hasn't marred me, but it is in fact a place where you can recognize me. We don't leave Jesus on the cross, but we don't forget the cross. Now, at the Easter service, which many of you will have attended, we marked this Easter candle here. I'm going to move over so you can see it. We marked this Easter candle with the 5 wounds of Christ, each one marked by a nail with a little bit of incense on the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's 5. Good job, I can count. And I said, by his glorious wounds, he has healed us. And we press those nails into the white wax of the candle. Now, normally, it is a brand new, pristine candle. We managed to reuse last year's to save money. Don't tell anyone. But the symbolism of pressing those nails into the unmarked wax to make those wounds, to reimagine those wounds of Christ, and then for that to become part of something which creates light, which creates beauty, which creates a focus for God, is another symbol of the wounded Christ. The Paschal candle is blessed, and it brings light in the darkness, just like the wounded Jesus does. Thomas sees and he knows. And the Easter candle stands among us as a kind of quiet teacher, as a symbol of Christ. It does not deny the darkness of Good Friday. It does not pretend that suffering has not taken place, but instead holds both together. The light and the wounds, life and scars, joy and pain. Now the flame does not erase or forget the nails, or overlook them, or pretend they never happened, or hide it away, or tuck it under a carpet. But the flame shines through them and makes them part of something which is bigger and more beautiful. Those who have scars inside and out, those who have experienced abuse, loss, mental health struggles, those who have been beaten and trodden down by life, this story lived out by Jesus, the story in which he isn't made entirely pristine and clean and healed in the way that we might expect, offers hope, because God takes up our wounds and glorifies them. This is a story of perseverance. Jesus refuses to give up. Of hope. This is God's story. This is our story, but also, importantly, this is each of your stories. Where is God using your wounds and your scars? Where is God bringing those things out of the darkness and into the light? What goodness is coming out of evil? And if you're struggling to see that, I would suggest praying, asking God to show you. Help me to understand, where is the goodness in this pain? Where is the goodness coming out of this darkness? How can I find God in the worst of situations? How can I find light and hope? A Jesus whose hands are completely healed, whose side is closed up, is a Jesus who has forgotten the cross and not truly brought it forward into his new life. And you can't forget pain like that. It shapes you, it changes you. The true hope is that Jesus isn't completely healed. And that means each of us who are broken also have that option, or that hope, of coming into a resurrection. Amen.